My name is Cameron Hart, and I was 35 when my family announced at Sunday dinner that I had always been the best at handling bills. They said it like it was a compliment. My mother smiled as she passed the potatoes. My father lifted his glass. My brother Tyler leaned back in his chair and said that without me, none of us would have made it through the last few years. What they did not say was that I had paid the electric bill, the water bill, the gas bill, the phone plan, the homeowner's insurance, the internet, the property tax installments, and the monthly payment on a car that was not mine. What they did not say was that every one of those payments came out of a checking account in my name, funded almost entirely by my paycheck, while everyone else called it the family account. That night, after my mother asked me to raise my automatic transfer again because Tyler needed help with rent, I went home and opened the account statements I had been too tired to read for years. The next morning, I called Alder Federal Credit Union and asked what would happen if I closed the account they needed most. The woman on the phone said, "Ms. Hart, you are the sole account holder. If you close it, every automatic payment attached to it will stop, unless the billers are given another account." For a second, I could not speak. Not because I did not understand the words, because I finally understood the truth beneath them. The account was never ours. It was mine. My family had simply grown so used to my name carrying their emergencies that they had started speaking about my money as if it belonged to the house. This is a family conflict story about financial betrayal, quiet revenge, and the moment a responsible daughter stops, confusing love with an unpaid obligation. My family made me pay every bill. Then I closed the account they depended on most. And for the first time, every adult at that table had to look directly at the cost of the life they had built around my silence. Before I explain why I did not close it in anger, you need to know how one temporary favor became the system that held my whole family together. Before I take you back to Linden Court, I want to speak to the person who became dependable so early that everyone around them began treating dependability like a resource they owned. You are allowed to help your family. You are allowed to care when people are struggling. But help is a decision. It is not a permanent subscription that other people can renew without asking you. If this story feels familiar, write the word balance in the comments. And if you enjoy calm drama stories about family conflict, financial boundaries, quiet strength, and the records that expose the truth, subscribe for more stories like this. Now, let me tell you about the house where every overdue notice somehow ended up on my chair. Every broken appliance became my problem, and every person who said we was really asking me to pay. The house on Linden Court was small enough that people heard each other breathe through the walls. It had a front porch with a loose railing, a kitchen window that stuck every winter, and a hallway that always smelled faintly of laundry soap, because my mother kept a basket there even when she had nowhere else to put it. When I was a child, I thought our home was held together by ordinary things. My father's work boots beside the door, my mother humming while she cooked, Tyler's music coming through his bedroom wall, and the sound of the washing machine turning after dinner. I did not understand that the quietest child in a family often learns to notice what the loudest people miss. My father, Richard Hart, worked in shipping for most of my childhood. He had a practical way of speaking that made every problem sound manageable until it was not. My mother, Elaine, worked part-time at a daycare center and spent the rest of her life making our house feel more stable than our bank balance really was. Tyler was 3 years younger than me and seemed to arrive in the world already expecting people to forgive him. He was charming. I do not say that with bitterness. He could make our parents laugh when the rest of us felt tense. He could tell a story about being late for school that made the principal sound unreasonable. When he broke something, he found a way to make it seem accidental. When he forgot something, he became overwhelmed. When he needed money, he looked ashamed just long enough for someone else to offer it. I was different. I made lists before I knew what the word budget meant. At 9, I organized grocery coupons by expiration date. At 12, I noticed that my father opened the utility bills before my mother came home and tucked them beneath the newspaper. At 14, I started helping my mother compare due dates on the kitchen calendar. No one told me to become responsible. They praised me every time I did it. "You are such a relief," my mother would say. "You have a good head on your shoulders," my father would say. Tyler got called creative. I got called reliable. For a long time, I thought reliable was another word for loved. After high school, I worked my way through college and became an accounts payable specialist at a regional hospital. My job involved invoices, payment schedules, vendor agreements, and the kind of small errors that become expensive when everyone assumes somebody else is watching. I was good at it because I did not panic when numbers became complicated. I could take a stack of statements, find the pattern, and tell someone what was missing without making them feel small. I loved that work. It rewarded attention. It made room for people who did not need to talk over everyone else to be useful. By the time I was 27, I had a small apartment, a dependable car, and the beginning of a savings account. I was not rich. I was careful. I packed lunches. I avoided credit card debt. I took overtime when it was offered because I liked the feeling of watching a balance grow slowly through decisions I had made myself. That was when my father hurt his shoulder at work. The injury was not catastrophic, but it kept him home longer than anyone expected. Workers' compensation arrived late. My mother's hours were cut at the daycare. Tyler had recently moved back into the Linden courthouse after a breakup, promising he would get back on his feet in a few months. One night, my mother called me crying because the electric bill was overdue and the water bill was due in 3 days. "Just until your dad is back on his feet," she said. "We hate asking." I believed her. I drove over with my laptop, opened my banking app, and did what I had always done when the people I loved were anxious. I found a way to make the numbers less frightening. I did not know I was building the first piece of a system that would one day require me to tear my own name out of it. The first payment was the electric bill. The second was a water bill. Then the furnace needed a repair. The homeowner's insurance renewal came due, and my mother asked whether I could set up automatic payments so nothing slips through the cracks while things are stressful. It sounded sensible. I was already the person who understood payment portals. I was already working in accounts payable. I already knew how much shame my father felt when money was tight. So I opened a separate checking account at Alder Federal Credit Union and named it Household Buffer in my own spreadsheet. I told myself the name was temporary. My parents were supposed to deposit what they could. I would use the account only for house bills. Then we would close it when Dad returned to work. My mother even promised to make a folder with every receipt so we could see the whole picture. For the first few months, she did. Then Dad returned on reduced hours. Then Tyler's car needed repairs. Then the water heater failed in January. Then my mother said it would be easier if I paid the family phone plan from the same account, because everyone was already used to sending bills to me. Somewhere between easier and temporary, the account stopped being a tool and became a place people sent problems. Every month, my salary entered the account in 2 parts. I paid the gas bill. I paid the water bill. I paid the electric bill. I paid the internet because my father needed it for job applications. I paid homeowners insurance because the renewal notice arrived while my parents were out of town for my aunt's surgery. I paid the property tax installment because my mother said they had already used that money for groceries and would replace it after Dad's overtime came through. The overtime never seemed to come through at the right time. Tyler started using the account too, though no one called it that. He would ask my mother if he could put his car insurance on the household payment thing for 1 month. He would say his phone line should stay on the family plan because it was cheaper. He would tell me he had covered dinner or bought groceries, as if a bag of takeout balanced a payment that came from my paycheck every 30 days. I did not confront him because I did not want to make the house feel harder than it already did. That was always the reason I gave myself. I did not want to make Mom cry. I did not want Dad to feel like he had failed. I did not want Tyler to think I was holding his bad year against him. I did not want to become the daughter who made a family problem about money. But money was already the problem. I was simply the one funding it. Over time, the household buffer account held more than bills. It held a packing fee for Tyler's job interview. It held a subscription to the home security system. It held a payment for my mother's prescription plan when she changed jobs. It held the plumber's invoice after the kitchen sink backed up. It held the late fee on the cable bill because Tyler forgot to tell anyone he had upgraded the package. Each payment was small enough to sound reasonable when someone asked for it. Together, they became a second life I could not afford. At my apartment, I began delaying things that mattered to me. I stopped adding to my savings because the buffer account was low. I skipped a friend's wedding in Oregon because I could not justify the flight. I turned down a larger apartment because I did not want a rent increase, while Dad's hours were still uncertain. Whenever I felt resentful, I told myself this was what family did. Then one afternoon, I heard my mother on the phone with my aunt. "No, the bills are fine," she said. "Cameron handles the account." She did not say Cameron helps. She did not say Cameron has been covering us. She said it like the account was a household appliance, like I was the setting that kept the lights on. I stood in the doorway, holding a bag of groceries I had paid for. My mother looked at me and smiled. "See? I told you we were lucky." I smiled back. That was the problem. Every time the system hurt me, I made it easier for everyone else to call it normal. There were signs I could have read sooner if I had been looking for permission to protect myself instead of reasons to keep giving. The word emergency appeared in nearly every request, but the emergencies were not always emergencies. A late phone bill became an emergency because Tyler had ignored it. A repair became an emergency because no one had saved for the house. A grocery transfer became an emergency because my parents had spent the week assuming the account would cover it. The more I solved, the less anyone had to plan. That is how enabling works inside a family. It often looks like kindness at first. Then one person becomes the cushion beneath every poor decision, and everyone else begins to believe the floor is naturally soft. I did not understand this then, but a budget is not only a list of numbers. It is a list of decisions. Every time my family allowed a bill to slide toward the household buffer account without asking me first, they were deciding that my future could wait. Every time I paid it without saying no, I was deciding that their comfort mattered more than my limits. No one called it exploitation. In our house, it was called getting through a hard month. The hard month simply lasted 7 years. The first time I understood that being reliable could become a punishment, I was 16. My father had promised to help me pay for a summer art program to towns away. I had earned a partial scholarship saved money from babysitting, and spent months building a portfolio. The remaining fee was not huge, but it was more than I could manage alone. The night before the deposit was due, Tyler came home with his friend's truck and a broken bumper. He had backed into a post in a parking lot. He was not hurt. No one else was hurt. But the insurance deductible was due immediately, and my father looked exhausted when he told me there was not enough money for both things. "I am sorry, Cam," he said. "You understand, right?" I did understand the facts. I understood that a broken bumper had become urgent, and a program I had worked for had become optional. I understood that. Tyler cried in the kitchen and said he had ruined everything. I understood that my parents were afraid he would spiral if they made him face the full cost. What I did not understand was why understanding always seemed to be my job. I gave up the art program. I said it was okay. I watched Tyler's truck return to the driveway a week later with a new bumper and a joke about how lucky he was to have family. My mother told me she was proud of how mature I had been. That was the first time I felt the strange loneliness of being praised for accepting something I should not have had to accept. Years later, the same pattern reappeared in smaller ways. Tyler forgot to pay his portion of a group vacation. So Mom quietly asked me to cover the cabin deposit and said she would repay me after Christmas. Tyler lost a job, so I paid his car insurance for 3 months. Dad wanted to replace the old refrigerator before it failed completely, so I moved money from my savings because he said it would be cheaper to handle it before an emergency. I did not resent helping with the refrigerator. I resented the assumption that my savings existed for everyone to use, while Tyler's future remained something everyone protected. When I tried to raise the subject, my father would become quiet. He would say, "We did our best for both of you." My mother would say, "Tyler just has more trouble getting stable." And I would hear the part no one said. "Cameron does not need anyone to get stable because Cameron will make herself stable." My parents did not see that every time they treated my strength as proof that I needed less care, they were asking me to become smaller in a different way. I stopped sharing good news because I knew someone would turn it into a reminder that I was doing fine. I stopped saying when I was tired because someone would say Dad was tired too. I stopped talking about the apartment I wanted because Mom would ask whether I could wait another year until the house was caught up. The household buffer account became the physical version of that silence. If something was due, it went there. If someone was short, the money appeared. If a bill was paid, no one asked where it had come from. My family did not need to say I was responsible for every bill. Their behavior said it for them. The most painful part was that I participated. I scheduled the payments. I filed the confirmations. I knew the account balance better than I knew my own savings balance. I learned the customer service numbers for the electric company and the gas company. I knew which day the water bill posted and how long the property tax portal allowed before a late fee appeared. When you are the person who keeps a family from falling apart, people call you essential. But essential is not the same as respected. Sometimes, essential only means no one has learned how to live without taking from you. The year after I gave up that art program, I started working weekends at a grocery store. I saved money in a metal box beneath my bed because I did not trust the family checking account not to absorb it. I remember counting 20s in the dark while Tyler watched television in the next room, unaware that I had quietly begun planning a life where I would not need anyone's permission to keep something for myself. When I finally moved into my own apartment, my parents helped me carry boxes up 2 flights of stairs. Mom brought curtains. Dad fixed the loose cabinet handle. Tyler came late, ate pizza, and left early because he had plans. For one day, I felt as if we were a normal family celebrating a daughter who had built something. Then Dad mentioned that the water bill at Linden Court was unusually high, and I opened my laptop on my new kitchen counter. I paid it before I had unpacked my dishes. That is what old roles do. They follow you into new rooms. The hardest part was not that my family asked. It was that I had learned to answer before anyone finished the question. The year I turned 34, I received a routine email from Older Federal Credit Union reminding me to review my online banking preferences. Normally, I would have clicked through it while waiting for coffee at work. Instead, I opened it late at night after my mother had called to ask whether I could pay the homeowner's insurance 1 week early, because they were between deposits. The email linked to a statement archive I had not used in years. I downloaded the last 12 months first. Then I downloaded the previous 12. Then I pulled every statement back to the month I had opened the household buffer account. I sat at my kitchen table until almost 2 in the morning, sorting transactions into categories the way I did at work: electric, gas, water, internet, phone, insurance, property tax, car insurance, medical copays, grocery transfers, Tyler's packing tickets, a streaming service I had never used, a vacation rental deposit I had not known came from my account. The numbers were worse than the feeling I had been carrying. For years, my family had told me they were contributing when they could. The record showed that my parents had made a few small deposits near the beginning, then almost none. Tyler had deposited money twice, both times after I reminded him. Nearly every recurring payment came from my salary. There was something else in the records. Several bills had been added through online payment requests, using my mother's email address. But the account owner listed on every authorization was me. My mother had access to the password because I had given it to her during Dad's injury. She had never been added as a co-owner. Tyler had been given the debit card number for one emergency car repair and had stored it in his phone. No one had exactly stolen the account. They had been invited into it years ago, and I had never withdrawn the invitation. That did not make the pattern fair. It made it harder to name. I made a spreadsheet. Not because I wanted to turn my family into a case file, but because I needed one honest version of the story. I marked each payment that served the household. I marked the payments that served Tyler personally. I marked the payments that had been described as temporary. I marked the deposits that never came. By the end, I had paid more than $80,000 through that account over 7 years. I stared at the total until the number stopped looking like money and started looking like rooms I had not lived in, trips I had not taken, rest I had postponed, and fear I had swallowed because I did not want anyone to accuse me of caring too much about bills. The next morning, I called the credit union and asked for an appointment with an account resolution specialist. Her name was Lena Ortiz. She had a calm voice and a careful way of asking questions without making them sound like accusations. When I explained that I had opened an account for family bills and wanted to understand what options I had, she asked one thing first. "Is anyone else a co-owner or authorized signer?" "No," I said. "Then the account is yours," she replied. "Other people may have used the payment information, but that does not change who owns the account or who can revoke automatic payment authorization." I wrote those words down, not because they gave me permission to hurt anyone, because they reminded me that I had not lost the right to decide what happened to my own money. The Sunday dinner that changed everything happened 2 weeks later. My mother said she wanted the family together because Dad had good news. I assumed it meant he had been offered more hours at work. I brought a pie from the bakery near my apartment and a bottle of wine because I still wanted to believe an evening with my family could be ordinary. My Aunt Joelle was there. So was Tyler, wearing a new jacket he said he had found on sale. My parents had set the dining room table the way they did for holidays, with the good plates and cloth napkins that made every conversation feel more important than it had any right to be. Dad told us he had been offered a part-time supervisor role. Everyone clapped. I was genuinely happy for him. Then my mother began talking about the house. "We have been so lucky," she said. "The bills have stayed manageable because Cameron knows how to keep everything organized." My aunt smiled at me. "You are a blessing to your parents." Before I could answer, Tyler laughed. "She runs the whole family finance department," he said. "We would be living by candlelight without her." Everyone laughed. I smiled because I had been trained to make a joke easier when it hurt. Then Mom placed a folded piece of paper beside my plate. It was a list of upcoming expenses: property tax, home insurance renewal, Tyler's car insurance, a new deductible for Dad's medication plan, a repair estimate for the roof. At the bottom, my mother had written, "Increase household buffer transfer to $1,850 per month." I looked at the number. My current transfer was already more than I could afford without canceling the savings plan I had finally restarted. I had not been asked. The paper was not a question. It was an instruction. Mom saw my face and lowered her voice. "We will all contribute more when things improve." Tyler said, "I am close to a promotion. I can help soon." Dad leaned back in his chair. "We are not asking you to carry us forever, Cam, just while we get stable." The words were so familiar that, for a moment, I felt 16 again. Standing in a kitchen, while someone else's emergency became my sacrifice. My aunt looked between us. "Surely you can all work it out. Family takes care of family." I put my fork down. "Can I ask a question?" I said. Everyone looked at me. "How much did each of you put into the household buffer account last year?" There was a pause. Tyler looked at my mother. My mother looked at Dad. Dad rubbed his hand over the tablecloth. Mom said, "That is not the point. We have all contributed in different ways." "I know," I said. "I am asking about the account." Tyler rolled his eyes. "Seriously? We are doing math at dinner now." "No," I said. "We have been doing math at dinner for 7 years. I have just been the only one looking at the total." Dad's face changed. "You are making this sound ugly." "It feels ugly," I said quietly. "I did not agree to raise the transfer. I cannot keep paying every bill." My mother's eyes filled with tears instantly. "After everything we have done for you." That sentence landed exactly where she knew it would. I wanted to apologize. I wanted to say I had not meant it that way. I wanted to offer a smaller amount just to make everyone breathe again. "Instead," I said, "I am not refusing to love you. I am refusing to be the automatic answer to every bill." No one spoke for a long time. Then Tyler said, "If you close that account, you will ruin the family." I looked at him, at the new jacket he had bought while asking me to increase his insurance payment, and something inside me became very still. "I have not closed anything," I said, "but I am going to review it." I left before dessert. The pie stayed on the counter. I did not close the account that night. That matters to me. I did not drive to the credit union angry and empty it. I did not cancel the electricity while anyone was sleeping. I did not want my family to suffer because I had finally recognized that I was suffering. What I did was make a plan. The next morning, I moved my direct deposit from household buffer to a new personal account at a different bank. I changed every password connected to my finances. I removed my debit card information from the payment portal Tyler had been using. I printed a list of every automatic bill attached to the account and the date each payment would come due. Then I sent my parents an email. I wrote that I would continue to cover the bills that were already scheduled for the next 45 days. I explained that, after that date, the household buffer account would be closed. I attached the list of billers, due dates, account numbers, and contact information so they could transfer each payment to an account in their own names. I also wrote that I would not add new expenses, new transfers, or Tyler's personal bills. The email was not cruel. I read it 10 times to make sure it was not cruel. It was clear. For the first hour, no one replied. Then my mother called 7 times. When I finally answered, she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "You are abandoning us over paperwork," she said. "It is not paperwork," I told her. "It is money. It's my money. And I have been paying bills I never agreed to pay. You open the account," she said. "Yes," I said, "to help temporarily." I did not open it, so everyone could avoid deciding what was theirs. My father took the phone. His voice was controlled, which I had learned to fear more than yelling. "You are embarrassing us," he said. "I am not telling anyone," I replied. "I am giving you 4 to 5 days. You are treating us like strangers." "No," I said. "I am treating you like adults." After I hung up, I sat on my sofa with my phone in my hands and felt worse than I had expected. Boundaries are often described like doors you close and lock, but mine felt more like turning off a machine that had been running so long everyone mistook the noise for home. I was afraid the silence would prove my family had only loved me when I was useful. I was also afraid that if I kept the account open, I would never find out who I was when I stopped being their emergency fund. At my appointment with Lena Ortiz, I brought 7 years of statements, my spreadsheet, and a folder that looked far more organized than I felt. Lena did not tell me what I should do with my family. She did not call anyone selfish or abusive. She looked at the records and asked practical questions. "Did you authorize this payment?" "Yes, originally." "Did you authorize this recurring charge?" "Not this one." "Did you know your debit card number had been stored in this merchant profile?" "Ew." We went line by line. The electric, gas, water, phone, insurance, internet, and property tax payments were all predictable. I had known about them. The deeper problem was what had grown around them. There was a tire store payment for Tyler's car. There were several transfers to a grocery delivery service that went to his address after he had moved out. There was a recurring deposit into a sports betting app that I did not recognize until Lena pointed out the merchant code. There was an electronics store charge from the month Tyler bought a television. There were late fees on bills because my mother had changed amounts or dates without telling me. I felt nauseated, but Lena stayed calm. "Most people do not notice patterns when they are inside them," she said. "That does not make you foolish. It means you trusted people and assumed the account was being used for the purpose you were told." I did not know how badly I needed someone to say that. I had spent years believing that if I had been smarter, I would have noticed earlier. But I had noticed. I had simply been trained to interpret every warning sign as a reason to be more helpful. Lena explained how to remove the automatic debits. She gave me a form to revoke access for the stored card information where it had been used without my current permission. She told me to contact each utility company directly and state the final payment date. She also suggested I speak with a financial counselor or attorney before asking anyone to repay money, because the rules around shared household expenses could depend on details I did not want to guess about. I appreciated that she did not promise me an easy answer. I was not looking for a way to punish my parents or put Tyler in danger. I was looking for a way to stop the account from continuing to carry bills that did not belong to me. For 3 weeks, I documented everything. I created a ledger with columns for date, merchant, amount, family purpose, and authorization status. I saved screenshots of my mother's messages asking me to just cover this one. I saved Tyler's texts, promising to pay me back after payday. I saved the email where Dad said the property tax was our shared responsibility, even though the house was in my parents' names and I did not live there. The records did not make the betrayal feel less personal. They made it harder for anyone to rewrite it. At work, I continued paying invoices for the hospital. I sat in meetings about vendor controls, authorization chains, and the difference between a business expense and an individual obligation. I kept thinking about the language we used there. No payment could be approved without a clear owner. No expense could be assigned without documentation. No department could simply decide that someone else would carry a cost because they were more responsible. At home, my family had expected the exact opposite. Every time I wrote an account number into my ledger, I felt a small piece of guilt leave my body. The truth was not that I had failed my family by closing the account. The truth was that my family had built a budget around money they never had the right to assume would arrive. By the end of the 4th week, I had a transition plan for every essential bill. I contacted the electric company, the gas company, the water department, the insurance provider, and the phone carrier. Each one confirmed that the account holder for the service could update payment information before the final date. I did not cancel anything without notice. I sent my parents the contact steps again. I reminded them that the account would close on the first business day of the next month. Then I waited for them to decide whether they wanted to prepare, negotiate, or continue pretending I would change my mind. One afternoon, while I was working through the older statements, I found a payment memo I had written to myself years earlier. Dad said this is the last month. I had typed it beside a transfer for $420. 3 months later, there was another note. Mom says Tyler will pay this back. 6 months after that, another, temporary until the house is caught up. I read those notes and felt compassion for the version of me who had believed them. She was not weak. She was trying to love people without becoming hard. She was trying to be the kind of daughter who did not abandon her parents when life was difficult. But love, without clear terms, becomes a place where memory can be edited by the person who benefits most. My family remembered every time I said no, because no was unusual. They did not remember the hundreds of times I said yes, because yes had become the background noise of their lives. The ledger changed that. It gave every payment a date. It gave every request a place. It made the invisible work visible enough that even I could no longer pretend it had been equal. My family chose pressure. My mother called my Aunt Joelle and told her I was threatening to leave my parents without electricity. My father told my cousin that I was upset over a few household expenses. Tyler sent me a message saying I was destroying his chance to get stable because he had been counting on the family plan for his car, insurance, and phone. No one mentioned the 7 years. No one mentioned the $80,000. No one mentioned that the account had paid for bills after Tyler moved out, bills after Dad returned to work, bills after Mom received a raise, bills that had nothing to do with the Linden courthouse at all. The story they told was shorter because a shorter story made me look crueler. My aunt called me one evening. She spoke gently at first. Your parents are scared. she said. Can you not just give them more time? I gave them 45 days, I replied. They are not good with money the way you are. That is not a reason for them to use mine, I said. She sighed. You know your father's pride. If the bills become visible, he will feel humiliated. I wanted to say that I had been humiliated every time a new charge appeared without my permission. I wanted to ask why my father's pride mattered more than my stability. Instead, I said, I am not trying to humiliate him. I am trying to stop paying bills I do not owe. The next day, my mother came to my apartment without calling. She stood in my doorway with her coat buttoned wrong and a grocery bag in her hand. For a moment, I thought she had come to apologize. Instead, she placed the bag on my counter and pulled out a stack of envelopes. Look at this, she said. These are all the bills you are leaving us with. I looked through them. Electric, insurance, water, phone. Most were bills that had always belonged to my parents. I am not leaving you with them, I said. They were already yours. My mother's face changed. That is a terrible thing to say, it is the truth. She sat down at my kitchen table and began to cry. I made tea because I still knew how to care for someone who was hurting. But I did not offer to reopen the account. She told me Dad had not slept. She said Tyler was panicking. She said they could not afford everything at once. Listened. Then I asked, what is the plan after the account closes? She looked at me as if I had asked a question in another language. We need you to help, she said. That is not a plan, I replied. There was a long silence. Finally, she said, I thought we were a family. We are, I said. But a family cannot mean one person pays every bill because everyone else is uncomfortable looking at the total. She left without finishing the tea. Afterward, I cried in my kitchen. I cried because I loved my mother. I cried because I hated how quickly a boundary turned into evidence against me. I cried because part of me still wanted her to call and say she understood. But she did not call. Tyler did. He was angry. He said I had always acted superior because I had a steady job. He said I did not know what it was like to live with anxiety. He said I was punishing him for being the younger brother who needed help. I let him talk. Then I said, I am not punishing you. I am not paying your bills anymore. He called me selfish. For once, I did not argue with the word. I just said, okay. It was one of the hardest things I had ever done. 2 days before the account was scheduled to close, my father sent me a message that said only this: we need to talk at Alder Federal. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. I almost refused. I did not want another meeting where everyone arrived, certain that my feelings would soften before the facts did. But I had already arranged a final appointment with Lena Ortiz to close the household buffer account. And I knew my parents had a right to ask questions about bills that would now need new payment information. So I replied that they could come as long as we stayed focused on the transition. When I arrived, Dad was already sitting in the small consultation room. My mother sat beside him with a folder on her lap. Tyler was standing near the window, arms crossed, as if he had been forced to attend a meeting about someone else's mistakes. Lena joined us with a printed account summary and a separate sheet listing the automatic payments that had been cancelled or scheduled to end. She introduced herself and explained that she could only discuss the account because I had given her permission to do so for the transition meeting. Dad began before she had finished. This account was for the family, he said. Cameron cannot just close it and leave us stranded. Lena did not look startled. Mr. Hart, the account is titled solely in Ms. Hart's name. There are no co-owners, no authorized signers, and no shared ownership agreements on file. Ms. Hart has the right to close it. My mother gripped her folder. But we have been using it for household bills. I understand, Lena said. That explains the purpose you believed it served. It does not change ownership of the account or the source of the funds. Tyler laughed once, without humor so that he sit. She gets to take everything because her name is on a form. I looked at him. It was my paycheck, I said. The room went quiet. Lena placed the account summary on the table. For clarity, the deposits listed on this account over the last 7 years are primarily payroll deposits from Ms. Hart. There are a small number of deposits from other sources, but the account history does not show regular contribution patterns from any other individual. Dad's jaw tightened. You ran numbers against us, he asked. No, I said. I finally looked at numbers that were already there. My mother opened her folder. Inside were handwritten notes about bills, but none of them added up to a budget. There were grocery receipts, a utility reminder, an old estimate for roof repair, and a list of things Tyler said he would repay. She pushed the folder toward me. We always meant to make it right. I believed that she believed it. But intention had never paid a bill. Lena spoke again. The purpose of today's meeting is not to assign blame. It is to explain what happens next. The account will be closed at the end of business tomorrow. The automatic payment authorizations already listed will stop or end on the dates shown. The service accounts themselves do not disappear. The people responsible for those services can update payment information directly with the utility or provider. Dad looked down at the list: electric, water, gas, insurance, phone, internet, property tax portal. Each bill suddenly had a name, a due date, and a person who would have to decide how to pay it. Tyler pointed to his car insurance line. Why is that even on here? I did not raise my voice. Because it has been paid from my account for 11 months, I said. He stared at the page. I thought Mom was covering it. Mom whispered, I thought you were sending her money. That was the moment I understood something painful and strangely freeing. The account had not only hidden the cost from me, it had hidden the cost from everyone. Tyler could believe Mom was covering him. Mom could believe Dad would replace the money. Dad could believe I was only helping with timing. And I could believe that, if I just stayed organized, the whole system would eventually settle itself. No one had been forced to see the truth, because the account absorbed it. Lena asked whether there were questions about the closure steps. My father asked if I would leave a balance in the account for 1 more month. No, I said. My mother asked if I would pay the final homeowner's insurance installment. It is already scheduled, I said. After that, you need to choose how to handle it. Tyler said nothing for a long time. Then he asked, what am I supposed to do? I looked at him. For the first time, I did not see the brother I was required to rescue. I saw a grown man who had been protected from every account that had his name on it. You need to make a budget, I said, and pay your own bills. He looked angry, but he also looked scared. That was not satisfying. Was sad. Quiet revenge is often misunderstood. It is not the pleasure of watching someone struggle. It is the decision to stop sacrificing yourself so that other people can avoid the lessons they need to learn. Lena printed the final closure confirmation. I signed my name. She asked me to verify the destination account for the remaining balance. Then she slid the form across the table one last time. My hand shook slightly as I signed. Not because I doubted the decision, because I knew the signature would change the role my family had assigned to me for most of my life. When I handed the pen back, my father stood up. He did not yell. He simply looked at me with an expression I had spent years trying to avoid. Disappointment. Then he said, "I hope you are proud of yourself." I took a breath. I am proud that I finally read the account, and for the first time, I meant it. After the meeting, I walked out of the credit union alone. The air outside was cold, and the parking lot was crowded with people doing ordinary errands. A man was loading groceries into a trunk. A teenager was arguing with someone on speakerphone. An older woman held a stack of envelopes against her chest as she waited for the bus. I stood by my car for several minutes because I had expected to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt quiet. The account had closed, but the story inside me was still moving. I had spent years believing that setting a boundary would make me cruel. I had imagined my family falling apart because I finally stopped carrying them. But the truth was smaller and more honest. The family had not fallen apart. A system had stopped working, and a system that works only when one person never says no is not a healthy family system. In the days that followed, I kept the final closure confirmation in a folder on my desk. I did not look at it because I wanted proof that I had won. I looked at it when guilt tried to rewrite the story. It reminded me that I had given notice, shared the due dates, preserved the essential payments, already scheduled, and offered information without offering my entire future. That was the boundary, not a slammed door, but a documented ending. The first month after the account closed was messy. The electric bill did not get paid on time because Dad assumed Mom had handled it. The phone plan was reduced because Tyler could not afford his share. My parents sold the second car they rarely used. Tyler moved into a smaller apartment with a roommate after realizing the rent he had been avoiding was real money, not a problem that disappeared when he delayed thinking about it. My mother sent me pictures of envelopes piled on the dining room table. At first, each picture felt like a demand. Then I realized they were proof that the bills had finally become visible to the people who owned them. I did not celebrate their stress. I did not tell relatives what had happened. When my aunt asked whether everything was okay, I said my parents were reorganizing their finances and I hoped they would find a sustainable plan that was true. Dad took the supervisor role and began working for days a week. Mom increased her hours at the daycare. They met with a nonprofit financial counselor, something I had suggested years earlier, but they had refused because they did not want anyone looking into their business. Now, they needed someone to look at the business of their life. Tyler called me 3 weeks after the credit union meeting. His voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. "I did not know you were paying all that," he said. "You knew enough to know your insurance was not free," I replied. "I thought Mom had it covered. Mom thought you were paying her back." He was silent. Then he said, "I am sorry. It was not a perfect apology." He still sounded like he was trying to protect himself from the full weight of what he had done. But it was the first time he had spoken to me without acting as if I had invented the problem. I told him I was not going to make him repay everything at once. I told him I was not going to lend him money. I suggested he write down every bill in his own name and look at the total before he spent anything else. He said he would. I did not know whether he would, but it was no longer my job to build his plan for him. My parents were harder. For a while, they treated every conversation with me like a test. Mom would tell me something about the house and wait to see whether I offered money. Dad would mention a repair and pause. I learned to say, "I am sorry that is stressful," without saying, "I will pay it." At first, the silence after that sentence felt cruel. Then it began to feel honest. A few months later, Dad came to my apartment to return a box of old mail he had found in the Linden Court closet. Inside were school certificates, a photograph from the art program I never attended, and a binder of old household buffer statements I had printed years earlier, but forgotten about. Dad stood in my living room, looking smaller than I remembered. "I should have noticed," he said. I did not rush to make him feel better. "I told you I was tired," I said. "I know. You told me family takes care of family. I know." I looked at the binder on the table. I thought I was helping. But after a while, no one even asked. Dad sat down. "I was ashamed," he said. "Every time you covered something, it made it easier not to admit how bad I felt. Then I started thinking of it as normal. That was not a full repair, but it was a truth." I said, "I cannot be the account again." He nodded. "I know," he said. "You should not have been in the first place." I cried after he left. Not because everything was fixed, but because I had finally heard one person in my family name the thing I had carried alone. Closing the account did not make my family disappear. It did not make the past fair. It did not refund 7 years of choices that should have belonged to me. But it gave me something I had not had for a long time. A life that fit inside my own name. I opened a savings account for the apartment I had postponed for years. I started taking weekend trips without checking whether a payment was due at Linden Court first. I bought a small desk for my home office and put the old household buffer binder in a drawer I rarely open now. The bills did not vanish when I stopped paying them. They simply returned to the people whose lives had created them. That is the difference between revenge and responsibility. Revenge would have been hurting my family because I was hurt. Revanche, if you want to call it that, was refusing to let their needs keep erasing mine. It was choosing financial boundaries, even when my mother cried. It was letting my brother feel the discomfort of a bill with his own name on it. It was allowing my father to face the truth that pride had made him avoid. This family conflict story is not really about a bank account. It is about what happens when a family decides that one person's reliability is more important than that person's freedom. For years, I believed I had to earn my place by paying every bill, managing every crisis, and making every hard thing look easy. I thought that if I stayed organized enough, patient enough, generous enough, someone would eventually say, "You have done one-sided." So I had to say it to myself. I have done enough. If you have ever been treated like the responsible one in your family, remember this: being good with money does not mean you owe everyone access to it. Being calm does not mean you agree. Being helpful does not mean you are available for every emergency people refuse to prepare for. You can love your family and still ask, who owns the bill? You can care about someone's fear and still refuse to fund the life they have not learned to manage. You can close the account, and you can survive the silence that follows. If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments. Have you ever been asked to carry a financial burden that should have been shared? At what point does helping family become financial betrayal? And for more family conflict stories about calm strength, hard boundaries, quiet revenge, and the truth hidden in ordinary records, subscribe and stay with me for the next story. A few weeks after Dad returned the box of mail, Mom asked whether we could meet for coffee. I almost said no. Then I remembered that boundaries do not require permanent distance. They require a different structure. She chose a small cafe near the daycare where she worked. She looked tired, but she also looked more present than she had in years. She told me she had made a budget with the counselor She had learned how much the phone plan actually cost, how much Tyler's insurance had added, how often they had paid late fees because no one opened the bills until the last day. "I did not realize how much you were carrying," she said. I wanted to say, "You could have realized," but she was not denying it. She was finally looking at it. "I should have asked you," she continued. "Every time, I did not forgive everything in that moment. Forgiveness is not a receipt you sign because someone is sorry." But I told her I appreciated the sentence. Then I told her what I would need going forward. No bill in my name without written agreement. No financial requests made through guilt, and no expectation that I would cover Tyler's expenses. Mom nodded. "That is fair," she said. It was the first time in years anyone in my family had called a boundary fair.